you need to give a feature to filter by anything. Doing something like that from a REST service, it's creating a huge problem on. Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of my channel. During this GraphQL video series, in last video I explained about how we can expose data through our GraphQL server. So after that I was thinking to jump into some advanced topic, but it seems like still there is little confusion behind these data sources and how we exactly expose data through GraphQL server. So I decided to discuss a little bit about data sources as well and show how we can configure data sources. Okay, so in this video we are going to demonstrate how we can configure data sources to get the external data, and also how we can filter records, right? And not only that, we are going to explore and see the features what we can get from GraphQL server, but you cannot easily get from REST servers, right? So if you have a REST based services, there are certain features to achieve. You need to do tons of codings, but same feature you can achieve through the GraphQL very easily. We are going to demonstrate and see how this works, right? Okay, a lot of things to do, so let's jump into the video. But before that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you subscribed already, make sure you share this video through your social media as well, so there will be more people to use this content. Okay, so first thing first, let's see whether this program still work from where we left last time. Okay, so let's see this. Yeah, it's working and we have our schema, right? For now, if you see here, you can see we just taking the data from our file, right? But this is not the right way to do that, right? We need to configure data sources. Basically, I mean, there can be multiple data sources, but basically there are few type of data sources. First one, this type of data sources, probably your data maybe you're fetching from some file system, right? And sometimes you may need to talk to a database to extract the data. Sometimes you need to talk to remote endpoint using REST services, right? You may need to talk to get the data from REST services. Sometimes you need to take the data from other GraphQL server itself, right? So that means we can discuss 4 different ways to configure data sources, right? So let's see first one. So what we are going to do is we need to get Apollo server data source library first. So I'm going to do is npm I Apollo data source, right? So I'm going to install this dependency to my project. Okay, so I'm going to create a new directory here called data sources, right? So you don't have, it is not something you must do, but I'm going to do this, right? So this is file based data service, so I'm going to create a file.js file. Okay, so now I need to take my data here from local file. So what I'm going to do is, right, so now I have my employees here, and also I'm going to get the data source library as well. Okay, so now I have data source and employee within my JavaScript file. So now what I'm going to do is, this is data source is just a class, so I'm going to do the same thing here. So what I'm going to do is employee service, and I'm going to extend data source. Okay, I'm going to extend data source, right? So now I need to create a constructor here, and this constructor is nothing much. I'm going to call the super, right? That's it, right? And also I need to create the initialize method, but for the initialize method I can get the config if I want, but for this one I'm not going to use any, but for example purposes I'm creating that too, right? So now I'm going to create get employee method. Okay, so here I'm just what I'm going to do is I'm just returning employee, right? So first what I'm just taking, we are going step by step. I'm not going to create a full-fledged data service at first look here, because then you will get little confused, right? So let's go step by step so it will be easy to understand, right? So now I'm done here. I have my employee service class, and also I have a get employee method to export the data, right? So now what I'm going to do is I go back to my index file. Now I don't need this one here, right? I don't need these employees directly. Rather, I'm taking my service, right? So employee service, data sources, file, right? So this is my this is where I created that, right? Okay, so now I have type devs and I have resolvers as well. So now I'm going to create data sources here, right? So let's do that. Data sources. So here this one is just one data source I have, employee service, new employee service, right? So that's it. Okay, so let's make it simple to avoid the confusion with the previous one. So now we already injecting type devs and we already injecting resolvers. Now what we need to do is we need to inject the data source as well to constructor, right? So now we need to inject the data sources as well to constructor. Okay, right. So now almost our wiring up done, but still my service don't know how to get this data from data service, right? Because it is just not like returning from a file. You may need to get the parameters from your front end, and various things can happen, right? So let's lay out our foundation from here itself. So we are going to take few parameters, right? First one is a parent, and also then you need to get args, right? Args is nothing but whatever, if there is any arguments coming from your front end to filter this data. And also we need to give the context and also info, right? We can talk, we can use and talk about each and every parameter separately. But for now, for this data source, I'm going to directly, for the context, I'm going to directly get the data source. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my service from the data source, right? So let's put this one here, it's in a different order, okay, that's fine. So we don't return employees directly. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to return from data sources dot my employee service, right? So inside the data sources I have employee service, and employee service dot, right, get all employees. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see what happens if I start now, right? npm start. Okay, no errors on the start. So I'm going to refresh here, and let's see. So it says response not successful. We get error 500. So it looks something is wrong with my server. So let's see what happened. Okay, I'm missing parenthesis here. Looks like, because it should be come inside that. And let's save this and see start. Okay, now I got, okay. So now it shouldn't be here. It's clear, right? So now let's go back and refresh. So still I have the same problem. So let's go back and see. Let's go back to, probably it's here. Oops, okay, I did a very fundamental mistake. So I need to export this employee service, because otherwise no one else can use that, right? So now let's see what happened. Okay, so now it looks like we are good. Okay, so let's write the previous query itself and see whether it's working still. We want to get employees, and we need to get first name and last name. Okay, right, so we still it's still working, so that means we didn't broke it, and but we now it's coming from through the data source, right? We are not directly injecting our JSON file here. Instead of that, we are getting it through a service, right? So now it's just a matter of how to configure this service to database or a REST service or other GraphQL server. I'm going to show you how to do those as well, don't worry, right? Right, before that, so now I want to implement something new. I want to filter records, right? I want to see, because right now I'm getting all the employees here, right? But I want to filter the employees and get the only particular employees, right? So how we can do that? Now you know, right? Step by step, right? First we have to define that query. So that means employee, right? So let's say find employee by ID, right? So that means I need to get an ID, right? I'm going to get an ID. It's a type of ID, and it return not an array but single employee, right? Single employee. So type is already defined, so I'm not going to worry about that. So I don't have to define the type, right? So now we need to implement a resolver for this find employee by ID, right? So how we can do that? So here again we need to get the parent and args, and also context. I'm directly going to get the data sources, right? And also info, okay? But here what I'm going to do is, instead of args, I'm going to use the destruct and directly going to get the ID, okay? So how this work now? Here what I need to do is I need to filter it for a particular given ID, right? So how I can do that? I want to implement this function here in the file as well, right? So now we have a get employee, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do take this a copy of this, right? Get employee by ID. So now we know we are getting an ID here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a filter here, right? So I can use employees dot filter and get a function and get a one employee here, right? I'm going to return if employee dot ID equal to the ID comes in, right? If that is the case, let's return this, right? So now I have this function, right? So I'm going to call this from here, okay? So see how these things get wired up, right? So I'm going to return data sources dot employee service dot get employee ID, but I need to pass the ID here, okay? So see how everything smoothly wired up, right? So let's go step by step. We introduce a query. We don't have to introduce a type, right? We know three things, right? The query, type, and the resolver, right? So we introduce the query, but we don't have to introduce the type because it's the same type we are returning, right? And here we included the resolver for that, and for the resolver we created a method inside our service, right? So let's see what happening here. I feel like we missed something because this might return as an array, but let's see, okay? So here the good thing is, okay, this is a one thing. GraphQL is stay ahead than the REST service. Let's say you want something like this, right? So you want to get all the employees, and also you need to get a specific employee for this UI, right? UI need two response, like it need the one specific employee and also all the employees, right? You might think, okay, when you get all the employees, you can filter it. Yes, true. But this example use case, right? Not the real use case, but in the real, there can be real use case like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to query employee by ID, but here I'm going to pass a ID, right? ID is, let's say 3, okay? And what are the fields I need here? I need first name and I need last name. Sorry, I don't need the comma. And also I need department, okay? So now if I query this, see, I mean result get the null. That is exactly expected, right? So we can fix that. But here you can see we get the first response and we get the second response. If it is a REST API, you need to send two different queries to get these responses, right? So I understand, I mean when you get the full employees, you can filter the single employee from that response, but just assume you need to get employees and projects as well, right? So employees and the projects. So now you can get the employees and all the projects in a single query to the backend, right? You don't have to go twice, right? So let's fix this problem because our employee still comes as a null. The reason is here it is returning as an array, right? So when you return this, you need to give the 0th element, right? You need to return the 0th element. Okay, so that's what I said. I felt like there something is wrong. Okay, so now you can see the employee 3 is coming. If you change this value to 2, right, the second employee coming, who is a Monica. Okay, so now let's go one more step further of this filtering. Okay, just assume, okay, here's the thing, here's the where GraphQL come really handy. So if it is a REST API, let's say we need this employee endpoint, to get employee endpoint to give a feature UI to filter by anything, right? Can be in first name, can be last name, can be first name and the department, first name and the designation, anything, or a designation and the department, anything, right? They want to, you need to give a feature to filter by anything, right? So doing something like that from a REST service, it's creating a huge problem on you. I mean, you can do that. I'm not saying you cannot do that, but you have to go round and round and or use some external libraries and do some tips and tricks, right? So let's see how we can do that here. It's very simple. So what I'm going to do is here in the employee, what I'm saying, hey, employee should be able to filter from anything. I'm just going to copy and paste here. Okay. So, and I'm going to remove this deprecated warning, right? And you can see here ID has exclamation mark, which means it tells ID is required, right? But the reality is this is a query. We should be able to give a feature even to filter without the ID, right? So that side is fine. So now what I'm going to do is here I'm going to tell, hey, return data source employee service by employee, and I'm going to pass the args, right? So whatever the parameters user sending here, UI sending here comes in this args, right? So now that is done, but I have only one problem. I need to implement this filtering part to this one, right here. Here now also you will get the args, but I should return this filtering by based on these properties coming in, right? So I'm not going to burn my hand myself to write this complicated filter. Rather than that, I'm going to use a Lodash, right? So you can do is npm I Lodash. Okay, so I got the Lodash here, so I'm going to use that const underscore equal require Lodash. Right, so now I have a Lodash in my project. So now I cannot just return employee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Lodash to filter this. So dot Lodash dot filter. I'm going to tell, hey, filter my employees based on the args comes here, right? So I mean, you may have a little hard time to understand this, but if you have prior experience with Node.js and JavaScript, how these libraries work, it may be very easy. So if you confused with this, just go ahead and read about the Lodash documentation so you can understand what's happening here. Okay. So anyway, so now I'm done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start this and see how this comes out. Okay, so let's see. I'm good with this. So let's first see whether my standard query is working. Yeah, it's working. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the department also here, so to make sure the filtering works fine, right? So now I want to get everyone from, okay, I'm going to get the designation as well. I'm going to get the designation here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everyone from service department, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell here, hey, give me everyone from department is service, right? So let's see what happened. When I send this query, you can see we filtered to everyone from service department, right? So now not only that, I want to tell, hey, give me everyone in the service department where the designation is electrical engineer, right? So let's do that. So now you can see I'm getting everyone from sales department but service department, but designation is electrical engineer, right? If I want only people from electrical engineer, so I just need to remove one filter. So now I get it, right? I'm getting all electrical engineers, right? So if I want to get someone from let's say accounting department, that can be done, right? So you know that now you don't have to I don't have to demonstrate everything. So let's say department is accounting, and now you get everyone from the accounting department. So just think, if you happen to implement this feature using REST, you need to write tons of codes, right? So, or you need to use external libraries who can do this, right? Or you need to use generic DTO, and you manipulate this DTO based on the request. Or you need to write advanced filters, right? But here, you don't have to do any of these, but GraphQL taking care of that. That's number one. The number two is, see here, so you can get everyone, let's say you have a requirement, everyone from accounting department, and with designation is a grade 3, right? And also you need a particular, let's say designation is grade 3. So I need grade 3 accountants along with a particular employee, right? So see now, so you have an employee ID 2 as well as you have a grade 3 accountant, right? So now if you want to take this feature using REST service, you need to send 2 queries, or else you need to get everything to the UI and filter inside the UI, right? So now if you have a 10,000 records, right, all the records will come but to filter this account 3, right? So but what the GraphQL does for you is GraphQL enabling you to ask what you want dynamically, right? So based on user tick on the search screen, user can check, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, and I need to filter based on this and this and this. Boom, you get it, right? So that's the beauty of GraphQL over the REST, right? I'm not saying REST bad, but I'm saying these features are like kind of out of the box features. You know how simply it was to implement that, right? So in the next video, I'm going to show you to connect your GraphQL to other GraphQL server, and also probably a REST service, right? And also we are going to discuss how we can nesting these resolvers, nested resolvers. I need employees belong to this department and do these projects, right? I need employees who work on these projects, something like that, okay? So that's for another video. Thank you very much for watching, and also make sure you subscribe and share. Stay safe and take care.